Hey, good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. Scott Luton, Chris Barnes, and Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Chris, Greg, gentlemen, how are y'all doing?
I'm dandy. Chris Barnes, are you awake?
I'm a little bored, but I guess once we get it going,
I'm a little lit and he's a little bored. So
to our audience, this is only the beginning. So we've had a lot of fun internally and hopefully externally with these new series between Greg's Tequila Sunrise and Chris Barnes' Supply Chain is Boring. It has been quite the internal competition and rivalry, but rest assured, great content from different angles.
No,
so we're going to have a lot of fun with this here today. But today's episode, we're really excited about. Chris, Greg, myself, Amanda. We're all really excited because for the first time, our audience, front and center, is going to see Clay Phillips. Chris and Clay. I'm going to get that straight. Clay Phillips, the Dawg, one of our key quarterbacks, the marketing guru. He's going to be in front of the camera answering questions, sharing his perspective on today's live stream. Greg, this has been in the works for quite some time, right?
I can't believe it's finally happening. I have been waiting my whole life for this, to get the Dawg on camera. I mean, this is like the Bear being on ESPN College Game Day, right? Think about how long it took to get him in front of the camera, and it's not that different here.
That's right.
And he knows what's going on, so we're going to hear about it.
Well, in addition to Clay, we've got Chris, who is kind of behind the scenes sometimes. He loves injecting his own brand of humor in our comments, which we love. And Chris is co-hosting today's live stream with us, so we're 2 for 2 already.
Yeah. My first comment on this show would have been, Greg, you've been waiting your whole life for this episode. That's okay.
My whole life. It's
right.
like being a sportscaster, right? Everything is the biggest, the best, the only that ever happened.
So, hey, let's say hello to a few folks that have already chimed in. We've got Patrick Kelly, of course, host of the Produce Podcast. Hello, Patrick. Hope this finds you well. I had a blast. Greg and I had a blast with you last time, a week or two ago. Look forward to that episode. Abbas from Algeria. Hope this finds you well. Tuned in via LinkedIn. Jamin. Gotta love Jamin. Greg, he's commenting that you're already dropping a dandy first thing right out of the gate. So love that, Jamin. Our dear friend down in Savannah, Chris, Jeff Leroy, president of the Apex Savannah chapter. Jeff, hope this finds you well. You're a Patriots fan, but we still love you.
Yeah, Jeff.
Hey,
hello.
Also Peter Heflin. We're always trying to get people from Home Depot on the show.
That's right.
There he is.
He's here.
He's repping Big Orange.
So Peter, Robert, Saham from, let's see here. Where's Saham from? Saham, tell us where you're tuned in from. Looks like you're on via LinkedIn. Love to know where you're viewing us from. Debbie, Stefan's with us. So we've got the whole crowd here today.
Yeah.
So before we bring Clay Phillips on and turn the tables.
Before Clay brings himself on, the very first guest to swoosh himself in, right?
We'll have to define exactly what we're talking about there in a moment.
Yeah, he's so good he can turn the lights off and be in bed before they're out.
So let's talk about. So if our audience enjoyed today's live stream, check out our podcast, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. Today we published Tequila Sunrise on the main channel. And you can also find Tequila Sunrise on its own in its own channels, again, wherever you get your podcast from. But Greg, tell us in a nutshell, Reader's Digest version, what you tackled on today's episode of Tequila Sunrise.
What the HE double hockey sticks is digital transformation and how you can enact it. Everybody knows the buzzword. Not everybody understands what it's about. It's really a simple concept, and there are 5 easy steps to make it happen. So I tried to simplify it for folks like I had to simplify it for myself. So listen up.
Love that. Love it. Really have gotten a lot of feedback. This is episode 7, I believe, Greg. Is that right? 8?
Can you believe it? It's been 2 months.
Can't snooze on Greg White. That's for sure. We've gotten a ton of feedback.
We had 300 listens in just a few hours. So people are listening.
Awesome. All right. So again, to our audience, check that out wherever you get your podcast from. You can find it on the Supply Chain Now main channel. You can find it on its own channel, Tequila Sunrise. Tequila with a T-E-C-H. Tequila.
Tequila.
All right. All right. So let's say hello to a few folks that have also just come in before we bring on our featured guests here today. You can't have a live stream without Jeffrey Miller. Jeff, hope this finds you well. Great to have you here. Enjoyed Jeff's and Luke's and several other folks' response to this top 10 technologies in the warehouse blog post that we shared on LinkedIn this morning via Atto Ryzen. It really generated some healthy discussion. So appreciated your comments there, Jeff, as always. Jacob Newman, welcome via LinkedIn. I hope this finds you well. Shamuka, I'm not sure where he's tuned in from. He's via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. And one more here. Oh, Saham, who we mentioned earlier, he is in New Jersey, tuned in via LinkedIn Live. So great to have you. All right, Chris and Greg, are y'all ready?
Ready.
I'm ready. Do you think Clay's ready?
Clay's always ready. So absolutely, without a doubt, let's welcome in Clay Phillips, the marketing guru here at Supply Chain Now. Hey, good morning, Clay.
What's going on, guys?
How you doing?
I'm great. I'm not gonna lie, this is weird. It's feeling weird. Switching myself in and being on camera. I don't know how to feel about it yet.
You already have the Guinness Book of World Records record for the first and only person to ever swoosh themselves into a Supply Chain Now episode.
I don't think it'll be broken. I don't think it'll be broken either.
Yeah, that's right.
It's because no one else knows how to swoosh.
That's right. Nobody here.
Well, so Clay, before you came on, Greg was asking if you're ready, and Delaney answered for you. He is ready and ready to go. So Delaney, hope this finds you well. All right. So before we've got 17,000 questions for you. Before Chris leads off with the first one, I want to point out you've got your Braves shirt on, and the Braves the last 3 or 4 days, that last Philly game and the last 2 days in New York have not been kind to our Braves. But give us a quick prognostication. Are the Braves going to turn it around and win the division in this shortened season?
You know, I think right now their spirits are broken a little bit, which is understandable. But I think they'll bounce back. I think I like the bullpen approach, the opener to the games. It obviously didn't work yesterday, but I think Snit's got some stuff up his sleeves. We'll make some moves.
I love it. And they're going to get it turned around. So I'm with you. Real quick,
That's
Emmanuel.
just like the Bear. I mean, right?
Got it.
Pretty impressive, man.
Yeah, he knows his stats.
Well, I mean, I've repeated that in my head a couple times. You know, we'll be all right.
That's right.
Yeah, there you go. I bet there's a lot of Braves fans that are doing that right now. Yeah.
Amen. Especially with the rotation. All right, real quick. Emmanuel is tuned in from Peru via LinkedIn. Hope this finds you well. Great to have you here. Keith Duckworth says he's representing Pure Michigan here. I think that's the state's tagline in some campaigns. Keith, great to see you. Claudia was asking if that was a Supply Chain Now a logoed shirt you got, Clay. We're working on those. So looks like we just lost our featured guest. We'll get him back here in a moment. All right.
He can do that. He really has that much control.
Back.
The magic of live streaming. All right.
Yeah.
He's like the wizard.
One last shout out, of course, Memory's tuned in via Johannesburg. Great to have you here, Memory, and looking forward to reconnecting with you again real soon. Okay, Chris, lead us off. Let's give Clay the quiz of his life.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, Clay, I've only been working with you for a year, and I still don't know what you do. So what exactly do you do? What's your role at now?
So my title is marketing coordinator. But, you know, in our environment, which we'll talk about later with the startup, you know, that really takes on a man of many hats, meaning. So I do a little bit of everything. Social media management, content production. I dabble in some sales strategy and video production. That was a learn as you go type thing for me. And of course, you know, like anything that Scott needs me to do, that's part of my role too. Really, I mean, man of many hats is really the definition of so many of all of our roles here. You know, you get assigned a task. If you don't know how to do it, you better learn and do it right.
And I suppose that's the benefit of working for a small business, you know, maybe a startup.
Hashtag
absolutely.
Startup life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, well, hey, Chris, let me tell you, because that might have been a little bit boring for you, but let me tell you that one of the things that Clay did early on that just stunned all of us, I think, was he recognized Instagram as a business platform, and we got a ton of inbound interest in sponsorships and things like that from Instagram. So we're letting the cat out of the bag, but we're a year and a half ahead of everybody else now anyway. So, but
right.
That was one of those pivotal moments where everybody kind of looked at each other and went, "Oh, this cat gets it." Right.
Yeah.
So, and we've had a lot of those moments.
Sure. Yeah. I remember just a couple of days ago, he's asking me what my Instagram handle was. And I was like, what are you talking about? He got on me. He's like, he couldn't believe it. He's like, what's wrong with you?
You got to have one, man. You got to have one.
You know, it really illustrates. Clay has brought a ton of expertise to the table, and Instagram and informing us of the power of that channel was just one of the things. It's this idea, this reverse mentoring, right? You know, Clay's poised to be graduating from UGA here momentarily, but we're always picking his brain and his fresh eyes on how we can better serve and engage our audience, because, you know, audience and hopefully turning out content that they enjoy and consume and appreciate. That's our North Star. And Clay, I think, has really helped. He's really sharpened the point on our ability to do that. So Clay, all kidding aside, we're really grateful for what you do and the impact you make, and kind of where you approach that from your heart, and, you know, your willingness to embrace and serve. I mean, that really has made this journey very rewarding. So great question, Chris.
I appreciate that.
I had another question. Are we only allowed one swoosh per show? Because, you know, I'm looking at
Keith. Too much bandwidth.
Keith Duckworth caught it. You know, he's like, when Clay came back, there was no swoosh. So I don't know. Are we limited?
Nobody has to leave during a swoosh, right? Could we just do the swoosh?
Can we
now?
just swoosh?
We could.
I'm
now.
looking for something to keep me awake here, guys. No offense, Clay, but it's a great topic.
So let's say hello to Michelle, also an important part of the team member. She is also a big UGA fan, so she loves your nickname, of course,
Go
Clay,
Dogs.
the dog. That's
Go
right.
Dogs.
All right, Chris, question number 2. What you got?
Well, I mean, it's opportunity abound for learning things. Anything that you've learned, either supply chain or just running a business or being involved in business. What's something interesting you've learned over the summer or through your experience?
I mean, it's all going to revolve around supply chain. I mean, it's what we do here. And I think the most interesting thing that I learned, this summer was just in a national panic, how easily an industry can become a scapegoat for the nation's problems. You know, everyone wants to point fingers. And I think that really happened to supply chain, but also how, you know, that industry can rise above the fray and be sort of a savior as well. So that's been really interesting to see how that played out, especially not being a practitioner, because, you know, I still consider myself in the marketing field, but I'm blessed to have my hand in both worlds. So, you know, really seeing the industry take the hit that it did and then just bounce back. I think that would be probably the most interesting thing from the past couple of months.
Yeah, if I can just interject there. So you're pursuing marketing degree, right? So,
yes. Yeah.
And that's interesting because do you take supply chain classes at all or anything related?
No.
Nothing like that at all?
No, I got into my introduction to supply chain was this job, you know, and I think we'll talk about it later in the show is what I would, you know, tell high school students. You know, I didn't know that this industry existed in the capacity that it did before I worked here. And even into the months that I worked here, I still didn't grasp it, comprehend it. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I tell people, maybe Greg, maybe you can appreciate this. When I was in university, they didn't have supply chain or logistics. It was engineering. And we learned about supply chain, actually, and it was a chapter in a marketing book, believe it or not. So that's the corollary.
Yeah. So
So everybody,
it's the 4 Ps.
everybody on screen who got a supply chain degree, raise your hand. Right?
Right.
Political
Still a hard
science. Right. So, yeah, you're right. The world has changed, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. But I think also that the experience, Clay, that you've gotten to learn it from practitioners, and I mean the best in the business. I mean, you've been there or you've been on the scene when we have interviewed some of the best in the business. That is such a huge opportunity. And I think also you get to see the strategic perspective, and because of COVID, you've gotten to see the strategic impact of an industry. Whereas before, I mean, all three of us came up through supply chain when it was that back office thing where all you were trying to do was get trucks and inventory and space as cheap as you could. And also make sure you don't run out at the same time.
Yep.
But I think now the strategic benefit is really, really recognized. And you're coming into the field at the right time.
Yeah,
Well put.
absolutely. It's got a seat at the table, and it did not beforehand. Even just the recognition of the industry, its name value. Even, I mean, people didn't. Supply chain. It's funny. We talk about our Apple review program, and we had a guy leave a gag review, and it's like my two favorite things: supplies and chains. And this show talks about them together. but all jokes aside, that some people don't understand what the two words mean together, and I surely didn't before this job either.
Well,
all right.
Don't feel like the Lone Ranger, because a lot of people did not know what supply chain was, and a lot of people who frankly have been in or worked with people in supply chain their whole careers. So it's been a slog to get to where we are, and it is interesting. Scapegoat to Savior. That's probably a book title. You better copyright that.
Speaking of books, perfect segue. Real quick, little aside there. So, Greg, I know you've got several questions up your sleeve for Clay, but real quick, Jacob asked this question, and Clay, we're going to put you on the spot, and Greg, Chris, feel free to weigh in as well. What is your most impactful books or tools that influence your learning? And while you think about your answer, I'm going to share with Jacob two things real quick. Supply Chain Dive is a wonderful resource news center for a lot of things happening across global supply chain. And secondly, associations are great sources of not only developing yourself professionally and adding credentials, but perhaps most importantly, building a network in the industry. All right, Clay, what would you say to Jacob's question?
Well, I mean, fresh on the mind would be probably Story Brand with Donald Miller. Actually, after we had that sales conversation this past Friday, I downloaded the ebook and dove right into it. And man, it's great stuff. And that's Story Brand by Donald Miller. And that's marketing. As far as supply chain goes, I haven't read too many books, but I can speak to that one.
Awesome. And hey, to the audience, y'all fill in the comments with some of your favorite recent reads and resources for learning. So let's, Greg and Chris, your lightning response to Jacob's question, and we'll start with you, Chris.
I'd go with a very old and boring topic, Theory of Constraints. The book is called The Goal. Eli Goldratt, and it's a perennial all-star. It's becoming a bit dated now in terms of demand chain and lean concepts. But whenever you can understand what Theory of Constraints is in that type of a setting, it's a fiction-based setting, and it's a good story. It's a good read. I'd encourage anybody to check it out.
Yep, Greg.
Built to Last. So a lot of people know better the book Good to Great, which is the follow-on to Built to Last. But Built to Last is a book about how to build a company with a purpose. And it's fascinating, some of the stories. Quick anecdote in that regard. Sony, the company Sony, we all know for outstanding electronics, for really introducing Japanese electronics to the world, started out as a bean curd company. And their higher purpose was, after World War II, to bring honor back to Japan. That was their higher purpose. So it's that kind of purpose book, and it's inspiring, and it's a great study. They did a fantastic study for that book.
Outstanding. And
Scott, if I can throw one more out there, just
Yeah.
I think what kind of put supply chain on the map, obviously before COVID, was the anybody read The World is Flat. That's kind of where it's one chapter in a book of 20 chapters, but he mentions how the global economy is very evolving, and this is what 15, 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where it got to play as well.
Outstanding. All right, I'm gonna add that to my must reads. All right, so to our audience, again, our main thrust here today is we've turned the tables. We're interviewing usually who's kind of behind the scenes. Clay Phillips, he's one of our marketing gurus here at Supply Chain Now, and we're getting his take and asking him questions for really the first time. So we're honored to have Clay join us. All right, Greg, where do we go next?
Let's. So we've asked this of everyone, and Clay was very busy vacationing when we interviewed everyone else about some of these questions. So
Terribly busy.
I know. I'm sure you were fishing it up. Or was it golf? Anyway, whatever. Now's our chance to ask you this question. Tell us, what is your favorite Supply Chain Now episode?
I mean, I'm so biased, so it's so hard to pick one. My favorite one is usually the most recent one. From a content perspective, which is what I work with directly, I've got a top 5. If I pinpoint one, Diego's from Modex was one that just so much valuable insight, and I mean it was almost like everything he said was a t-shirtism. I mean, just he delivered. Definitely. All the interviews from Modex were great. Brad Ruffkis with Boxlock was a fantastic one. It's a different dynamic when you're in person at these events, and I miss it so much. And you're talking to these people. It sparks conversations that sadly sometimes just don't happen virtually. So anything that we do in person, it's definitely up there on my list.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, so I have to ask you this question, being a bit of a startup guy myself. You mentioned some of the dynamics of working for a startup earlier, but tell me about what it's like working for a startup or this startup. What do you like? What do you hate? What makes you, clench your fists? What makes you leap for joy?
I don't clench my fist that often, I promise, Scott.
He just punches the wall.
Yeah. On this other side, this is my workstation. On this other side, there's a hole in the wall that But it's got to be the personal relationships. You're going to build those in a startup more so than in any other environment, and I can say that without even working in another environment. I know it's true. The personal relationships that you build with your management and with your peers is going to be exponential compared to working in a traditional established organization. I think that'd probably be the first, foremost benefit of working at a startup. But there's definitely, I'm not giving you the real dirt, Tammy. But you're with us now, so maybe you'll dig up your own dirt. But
that's right.
Yeah, I think the personal relationships would be the foremost benefit, and there's more obviously, but.
So John Buglino, and John, hope this finds you well. It shares a great sentiment here. Everyone should work for and be part of a startup in their career. I agree with you. I think kind of as an aside, I've always thought if more folks waited tables at one point in their career, we'd all be a lot nicer to everybody. I bust tables at a seafood restaurant, and that is a very humbling experience in making next to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the startup it really does. John and Clay, and then really everyone here, it gives you a different view on the industry, a different view on the art of the possible, for that matter. And you really get creative when it comes to problem solving and serving your customer. All right.
Absolutely. You watch the business evolve, and you appreciate the process so much more when it's up to you to make it happen. And so many times it is up to us, individually, Amanda and I, and even Devin and Genoa, who we've introduced on these shows, that something needs to happen. Go, GSD as Kara from Smith Brown coined it. We won't go into the
get stuff done.
get stuff done.
All right.
I think that, that's an important part. By the way, there are two other jobs that I think people should have also, Scott. One is everyone should work on a farm. They should have to do hard physical labor. And everyone should wait tables and or work a retail job. Imagine a scenario where, in retail or in a restaurant, you're in the back, you're shouting at one another, trying to get stuff done, advocating for your client. Then you have to immediately do a literally 180 degree turn and put a smile on and go own it, right, wrong, or indifferent, right? As someone who ran a restaurant that I worked at said, there is no they, right? They didn't do anything wrong. They is we.
Yeah.
So if there's any lesson you learn, it is that. And frankly, at a startup, it's very, very similar, because sometimes there is nobody else to do it. And if you come up with the idea, you have to come up with the action to put it into play, right?
Great sentiment there. There's not a marketing department per se, or a customer service department per se, or an IT,
sales, engineering, production.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that I wouldn't. I mean, as limiting as that can be, because there's always going to be 24 hours in a day, and never 25 or 26, even when we need it. That holistic view of the business and how things work, and how we can make improvements and enhancements. I mean, that's certainly some of the big value that Clay's brought to the table in our business, as he learned it and really has become a leader within the business. So that's the aspect of the startup early stage world that I wouldn't trade, except for maybe $1 billion. But anyway, it's part of the rewarding aspect of the journey.
So,
all right, great.
I got one more question for Clay. You mentioned it earlier. If you were to talk to people who are in school, kids who are in school today, right? So I'd like to twist the question just a little bit. So if you were to talk to somebody in high school or even in college about a career in supply chain or careers in general, just from what you've learned in the last year in a professional role, what would you say to them, or what advice would you give to them?
Get involved, get an internship, unpaid or not, learn how to work in a professional environment, learn how to interact with your peers. It's the basic best practices. And, you run them into the ground and they're repeated constantly, and your college tells you to do them. Your parents tell you to do them. Your uncle that, everyone tells you to do them, but do them. Actually, I mean, they're not best practices for no reason. Some are outdated, some don't, but build your professional network, take pride in the relationships that you make, and nurture them, because you never know which one is going to come back and offer you a job in the future. You never know. It's not about who you know, it's about who knows you, right, Greg?
That's right. I was just thinking that very thing. That old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. I turn that 180 degrees on its head and say, look, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And we know you now. And when you do an internship, that company gets to know you and you become a known quantity, and you can see it happen over and over again. Every company I've ever run, we have hired interns, and it's because we get to see what they can do. We get to see if they're going to work out, and we get the opportunity. We get the first shot at them, when they're ready to go into the career world. So it's great for both parties, which we've talked about on some shows fairly recently, but that's great advice. So let me ask you a little bit about supply chain. So you, not a supply chain degree, weren't coming out of school intending to get into supply chain. You, like many of us, have fallen sort of backwards in love with supply chain. So what would you say either to students who aren't studying supply chain about it as an opportunity, or students who are studying supply chain about it, or about other potential job opportunities?
I can speak to it. First of all, I would make sure that they knew what it was, right? it's not just logistics and transportation. It's not just trucks on the interstate. When you give it this all-encompassing view that it deserves, it's not just an industry. It's a path forward for sustainability and reducing your carbon footprint. It's an industry that you can enter and truly make a difference. And it's might be the only one that I've encountered that I can actually say that.
Well put.
Yeah, no doubt.
Lots of good stuff there. Hey, let's take a quick aside. We've got a couple comments I want to share from the audience. First off, going back to hard work, Don
That's
Edward
the one
Long.
I was just looking at.
Hey, Greg, I worked in roofing with my father at 12. Does that count as a hard start? That's some hard work, Don.
Unless you were a chimney sweep, that doesn't count.
I've done.
I'm thinking about Mary Poppins.
Oh,
I'm
gotcha.
pretty sure that when my parents and grandparents and extended family had us do physical labor like that, it was at that time to convince us to go to college. And roofing, roofing is one of those things that will put you over the top. You're on top of a roof, off of the ground on the hottest days of the year, doing work, lifting things that weigh almost as much as you do. Yeah, that will convince you to find a trade or go to college for sure.
That's right. Jamin, back on the small business angle, he says, hey, the cavalry is not coming. It's you. Yeah. It's on you or the team. Absolutely, Jamin. Here's an interesting question I want to pose. It's not exactly right in line, but since we've got Chris here in particular, I want to pose it to, and of course, Clay and Greg, feel free to weigh in. Keith says, hey, what type of certifications would you recommend a newbie in supply chain management to start off with? And here Keith mentions the APIC CSCP, CPIM, and a few others, including ISM certs. Chris, I know you do a lot of training and coaching. How would you answer Keith's question?
My first question would be, what are all those acronyms mean? I don't know what he's talking about. No,
it's pretty boring.
It is really boring. So Keith, maybe you could type in your comments. What would you suggest? Let's try that. See what I have an opinion, but then I was also looking down at Don Edward Long's comment. I don't even know what hot mop roofing is, but it looks cool. So, but no, yeah, I mean, I think the CSCP certification through APICS, that's kind of an all-encompassing one. I don't know if, again, Keith, maybe you could chime in there and give us your opinion. But that's a good across-the-board understanding, because as Clay had mentioned, the challenge is, understand what it is, but sometimes we don't even know what it is. I mean, we just, Scott and Greg, you guys just interviewed the customer experience, right? Right. You had that show. So that's kind of an extreme. It's still part of supply chain. It's out on the periphery, but it's still part of supply chain. Go ahead.
I would just add to Chris's answer and feedback here, as someone that's gone through a variety of different certification training and earned them. I would start with, Keith, what you're trying to get accomplished. Where do you want to be? What's that next step? I think so many folks start with the certification and then, either they don't sit for the test because they realize it's not for them halfway through. And so they waste money and time and valuable time. So really zeroing in on what what you're trying to get accomplished by adding credentials is the most important question you start with. And then there's so many out there. I think then you evaluate, the path, the network, the instruction, the return on investment in terms of costs and time and stuff like that. So great question, Keith.
Yeah, I think the knowledge is the most important thing. And as you said, if you're not clear on what you want to do, there are plenty of free options. edX, you can take classes from MIT on supply chain. I would suggest starting there. As you both have said, figure out if you have an affinity, if you have a gift, if you have a passion for this before you go and do, before you join an association and take certification tests. Because edX, as my wife loves to say, she's going to Harvard right now, right? She's taking free classes from Harvard, and she can take them all the way to, you can't qualify for one online, but she can take them all the way to a degree. So that is a huge opportunity. I would suggest strongly that. And then after you've determined that you have a love for it, I don't know where everyone geez, I don't even know how to do that. There he is. No, there he is. There, he's there. He's there. There, that guy. Then talk to that guy right there. Yeah, that guy right there. Yeah, because he, while his classes are exceedingly boring, they are really, really valuable.
So
it takes a lot of work to make them that way too.
It's true.
That's right.
Yes, it takes all kinds of experience to do that.
So
Yeah,
Keith responds real quick. He's looking at CSCP. He's trying to get his foot in the door. He's got a lot of IT asset management experience, but needs a little piece of paper that helps get his foot in the door. So Keith, hey, we can all relate in some way, shape, or form. And I would definitely reach out to Chris maybe after today's live stream and get some additional feedback.
Yeah,
and we'll make sure.
Yeah, if you're thinking CSCP, you need to talk to.
That's right. That's right. That guy, Chris Barnes.
That guy.
There you go.
And if supply chain is boring, that's really a good thing, right? It means it's uneventful, no surprises, no fires. I mean, that's really a good thing.
Everything but. That's the beauty of the irony of the title of that show is it is anything but boring. And that's what would be more perfect for Chris and his sense of wit than a title like Supply Chain is Boring.
That's right.
See him dozing
well, Debbie V asked earlier, I think it was a couple of days ago now up in the comments, but what is so boring about supply chain? So my answer to her is obviously she's never listened to any of my podcasts.
That is true. And we can fix that. That's one problem we can fix easily. Right. I think Amanda just dropped in the comments a link to that channel and all that programming. So check that out. So if we can, I want to shift gears back over to Clay and to our audience. Thanks for the comments and the questions. We'll circle back before we wrap up. All right. So Clay, let's see, you're graduating in December from the University of Georgia, right?
Yep.
And your degree, good dogs. Your degree will be in
marketing. With an emphasis in professional sales.
Okay. And as a soon to be new graduate, and as you have different conversations and hear from your colleagues that are also graduating as they interview and whatnot, and you hear different experiences, different cultures, different opportunities, if you could speak to a bit, what type of culture and values, company initiatives, what appeals to you in an employer?
That's an interesting question right now. It's a pretty standard question, per someone my age, my generation. But right now it's interesting because there are so many companies that are lacking empathy, and they're doing it publicly, and it's it's an embarrassment to those companies, I think. But on the flip side of that, there are companies that are doing the right thing and that are showing that empathy and that are really rising above the tide, and are making a name for themselves with my generation coming out of college. Because, I'm kind of stuck between two generations, and we talked about that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but I would really say that for a generation without a plight, too young to remember 9/11, that sort of thing, I think this could very well be that plight, and not the virus itself, but the effects, what it's done, how people are reacting to it. I think that really what I'm looking for when I come out and my peers is a sense of empathy and an understanding of difference and being the change and putting a positive foot forward and making a positive impact, with those values in mind.
Well said.
Mm.
It's funny. I was talking to somebody, several weeks back, and I thought, did you ever in your lifetime think that your kids would have a better, when I was a kid story than you do? And this is it, right? This whole COVID, seismic societal disruption, right? The complete cessation of society, normal society and commerce, and the the short term and long ranging effects that these generations will deal with, have dealt with, and will deal with as they're coming of age. It's substantial, no doubt.
Yep.
Good insight, Clay.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, and appreciate kind of the spirit in which you shared it and being so transparent with us. What do you think? How have you seen some ways? Empathy is one of those words that you hear tossed around oftentimes without any meaning behind it, right? But it's kind of like lean. It's kind of like resiliency these days, and resilience. Clay, what comes to mind? What do you draw strength from when you see the folks that really practice empathy? Any examples come to mind? Anything that you've seen that really has resonated with you, whether it's related to supply chain or related to business, or just a stop in your personal journey?
I hate to pitch and to self-promote, but our Logistics with Purpose series really highlights some of these businesses that are doing things ethically in the right way and putting that foot forward. And we coin it being the change that needs to happen. Specific companies like our friends at our coffee company, and everything that Enrique has really lined up for us to spotlight. I think that you can go to that program page and it's full of those initiatives.
Yep. Well put. And I want to elaborate a little bit more on the example you mentioned. But first, Don says, hey, great perspective, Clay. Every generation has its unique challenge that helps to shape what their impact is, not just on the present, but how they can help shape the narrative for the future. So, Don, good comments there. So one of the things that Clay mentioned as part of Logistics with the series, and it's not pitching if we're bragging about other companies, right?
Yeah.
Because it really is. It's missional. It is, Z Beans Coffee, for example, comes to mind, and a big part of their mission is making sure farmers in Ecuador, coffee farmers, aren't taken advantage of, like has been the case throughout history, right? And that they can actually make a healthy living and are treated as having a seat at the table, right? And that. Clay, when I hear you kind of describe your point of view and some things that are important to you, stories like that just jump almost out of my headphones, front and center, because as Vector and Enrique Alvarez likes to, their mantra is changing the world, no doubt about it. And by fueling companies like that, they absolutely are changing the world and making life so much better. I mean, think of the families behind the farmers. So I appreciate you mentioning that. Greg, I know you've been a big part with me as co-hosting that series. What really stands out to you as we talk about empathy?
Man, so many of them. I'm thinking of companies, Love Beyond Walls, right? On the street as they were before, but during COVID, they were conscious to give help to the homeless who are the most underserved, right? So that they had places to wash up and clean up, and masks and other PPE to help keep them healthy because they're the most exposed. Gooder, right? Gooder is a for-profit company that is helping to eliminate the 40% of food waste that occurs from restaurants and groceries and that sort of thing. They are a channel to allow, Kroger and Publix and TGI Fridays and whoever else to get that food to people in need. As Jasmine Crowe says, hunger is not a matter of availability. I'm paraphrasing. It's a matter of logistics, right? It's not that the food isn't there. It's that it's getting the food to the people in need. And it's things like that where you really, really see the passion and the empathy for people in the people that they're serving, and with Z Beans, and I forget the other one.
Comunidad.
I'll tell you exactly.
That's right, Comunidad. Yeah.
Comunidad Connect.
Yeah. They are actually making sure, and this is coffee in particular is a deeply unfair supply chain, and they are making sure to bring equity to the people who are producing and delivering the goods, and keeping more money in the pockets by creating these communities. So that's incredibly valuable.
Yeah, Clay, go ahead.
It goes back to my point that, that I would tell people coming into college, selecting a major or selecting an emphasis or a minor, because a lot of people can major in management, minor in supply chain. That's a route that a lot of people go, is that, I said that this is an industry where you can change the world actively and see your part in it and see your hand working in it. And I think that all of these testaments or testimonies are a testament to that. That this is one of the only industries that you can go in and just immediately make a difference or immediately help a company make a difference.
Love it.
One of my favorite Greg White t-shirt-isms came from one of those shows. When you think you've done good, do gooder. Yeah, that's great.
So Kyle,
that's a great show.
It really is, and really appreciative of Enrique and the Vector Global Logistics team. Y'all check out that company. I mean, they're really doing some special things to give forward across the world. I mean, from Africa, and a lot of the work there, they're shipping books to children in Africa and supporting schools in Africa and infrastructure to here in the Western Hemisphere, in Central and South America, and with coffee growers and coffee families, and you name it. So that, Kyle, to your question, the company, whether it's Z Beans Coffee, which is one of the companies we talked about, Comunidad Connect is one of the companies that are doing special things we're talking about, and then Vector Global Logistics and Gooder. Those are the 4 company names. I think I caught them all that we were just speaking to. And if you have a specific question, put it in the comments. Amanda will get back to you. Thank you, Amanda.
I've got a quick comment there. This is
Chris,
Greg
please.
Again. Relating to this week's interaction between you and I just noticed that, speaking of Kyle Van Artsen, he just subscribed to Supply Chain is Boring. I just wanted you to know that.
Yeah, I saw that.
So now I have 2 followers, including myself.
Actually, I'm a follower too.
Yeah. Thank you.
I used to go to sleep at night.
Oh, thank you. But it's a very good show.
It is a good show. I mean,
So,
really,
thank you, Kyle.
not to get too far off, but I mean, it is really valuable. Look, the way I describe it is, you tell us where you talk to the people that got us started, have got us to where we are now, and that will get us into the future. And I think that's a really important perspective. As as Clay is talking about, always be learning.
Yep.
Not always
Absolutely.
closing, always learning.
All right. So as we don't touch that coffee. All right. So as we are kind of moving to the end here, and Syed, good morning, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. Looking forward to connecting. Greg, we're connecting with Syed tomorrow on his show. So looking forward to that. All right. So Clay, we like to challenge our audience at the end of each episode in our own meaningful and very genuine way, by the way. That we don't take that lightly, because we approach that like we approach our own team, challenging to do more and do more. So final word, stage is yours. What would you like to leave with folks, or how would you like to challenge folks, or what's the one big thing that folks should take away from what you've shared thus far today?
I think it goes back to asking what I would say to these students. I think a powerful initiative would be to participate and initiate programs where you are educating people on what this industry is and what it can do and its potential and everything that it encompasses and the positivity that it can bring. I think that those types of initiatives are what we need right now on the rebound from being a scapegoat and being blamed for a lot of problems, and now being a sort of savior. Now, like, supply chain is the reason why people's lives are back to normal in a sense. Go spread that gospel.
All right. That is what a great way to wrap on. And Clay, I know you've got 1,000 things going on. I really appreciate your willingness to let us turn the tables and ask kind of put you on the spot and ask you questions and get you to share What's between your ears? Well, it's been fun. It hasn't been long enough. We've got 18 other questions that we can't get to here today, but we'll have you back as always. And Clay, I know one of the things that you've been excited about, as the rest of us, are some of these new series. Clearly we've talked about Supply Chain is Boring, and Tequila Sunrise. We're driving forward in our give back programming with Veteran Voices. This week in business history, we've got Jammin, who's in the comments here earlier today. He'll be on a live stream in a couple weeks. The logistics
experience.
The Jammin experience. I mean, it really is. It is invigorating. And Chris, I want to give you a chance with Supply Chain is Boring. We talked about the latest Tequila Sunrise episode. What's the latest episode that you've published, or what's the latest one you're working on? Give folks a heads up on what to expect.
Well, one thing I was disappointed in Greg again. Seems to be par for the course, but he interrupted Clay. He asked Clay what his favorite episodes were, and Clay was just getting ready to finish and say, Supply Chain is Boring interview with Norman Bodek, the 3-part series, but you interrupted him, so he didn't have a chance to say it. I saw it, Clay. So that was awesome. And then the John Hill episodes were awesome too.
Yeah.
But some of these people are so boring they take 2 or 3 shows. I don't understand. No, but that was fine. Just those things. And then I got a new one coming up. It's with Dr. James Stock, University of South Florida. He's actually a marketing professor. He's new there. He is starting a great program for supply chain under the marketing arm at University of South Florida. And what he has done is he has interviewed a lot of the great historical people from academia and people that have been kind of the people that I try to focus on. He's interviewed them, audio and video, and I'm going to reproduce those. I talked to him as an intro. I'm going to reproduce those, so that'll be coming out as well.
Love it. No shortage of good stuff that folks really learn from. That's what I love about Supply Chain is Boring. And just to clarify, if you can't tell, we have a lot of fun with that title. It's kind of tongue planted firmly in cheek, and it's a perfect fit for kind of Chris's approach. So if you can't have
a great challenge to professionals, frankly.
Yeah, it is. That's the idea.
That's really, to speak to what Clay was talking about, that's really what we're fighting against, is this identity and we even talked about it with the president of CSCMP today, Rick Blasgen, and is this perception that it's a back office thing. As he said, it's the wire between the electrical system and the switch. You just expect it to work, right? So that kind of exposure, that it's not that simple and it's not that boring, is really, really important.
Yep. Well put. All right. That is going to be close to a wrap for today's live stream. I want to mention that we do have the genesis of our next Stand Up and Sound Off event coming up. We've planned it for September. We'll be publishing that in the next day or two. We're going to continue the conversations around the work we have to do with the state of race and industry. And I know we've gotten a lot of great feedback on that, Greg, Chris, and Clay.
Yeah.
And we've got some folks that don't want to tackle that right now. But, if we're not talking about it and having uncomfortable conversations, we're not learning, and nothing's going to change. So I'm really excited to be partnering with Elba Pereira Gallagher on this next one. You can check out her nonprofit, showme50.org, if you want to check out some neat organizations doing some neat things. And that date will be released here momentarily. So, all right, Clay, you've given your last challenge to the audience. I love that. We're going to do the same with Chris and Greg, and then we're going to sign off. So, Chris, final thought for the audience for this episode.
Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of carrying on your theme that you talked about, the race discussions and things, that it's interesting. I don't know if the John Fluker episode was built around that, or that was the theme, but that kind of that resonated well with him as well. So if you're interested in that, check out that episode coming out.
Yeah,
absolutely,
that's coming out shortly. Yeah,
tomorrow. It's going to be part of our Big Friday series. John Fluker is president CEO of Grenzebach Incorporated, and that was a great conversation. So that's a good call out, Chris. All right, Greg, I know I always enjoy your final thoughts as well. So what you got?
Give a kid a chance. I mean, not a kid, but I think what you can see here from this episode, I even had some surprising moments. We work with Clay every day for a year. So I think you can one of the most joyous things about working with young people is that they're learning every day. They are teaching every day, reverse mentoring, as we talk about with Tandria Bellamy all the time. And there is so much enthusiasm. Everything is new, that it brightens your day. It inspires you and the rest of the organization every single day. This is why we want new young blood in supply chain. Whether that blood is new and young or just new, whether that's somebody who was an engineer or a physicist, or that's a person of color or someone from a different culture or different lifestyle choice, or just a young person getting out of school, all of those introduce a new awakening to what we can do, what we can be, how we can work together.
Yep. Well said. Clay, Chris, Greg, really have enjoyed this episode. Clay, thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
Thanks for your never being satisfied, always pushing what we need to be doing, what we should be doing, the sense of purpose that you shared here today in a very well-spoken way. And, I look forward, it's been a year, about, 13 and a half months. Does that sound just about right, Clay?
Yeah.
I look forward to what the next 13 and a half months and a lot more, what we can tackle there. And again, thanks so much for your time. To our audience, thanks so much for tuning in, your comments, your questions. Thanks for kind of rolling with the punches. This was a unique episode, very intentionally so, but one that was special to all of us, and hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. So on that note, hey, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed, and we'll see you here next time on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.